Muskies rock! At the Ottawa River Musky Factory.
Good evening and welcome to the Suick Seminar Series, episode number 3, 2026. My name is John Anderson. I'm the owner of the Ottawa River Musky Factory. I am here with the usual suspects, Brent Bocek and Noah Oliveira Hill, both of the Ottawa River Musky Factory as well. Tonight's guest, a guide for over 30 years, a teacher, an advocate for everything musky in the state of Wisconsin. He's number 1 on the all-time lunge log rankings for Muskies Incorporated with over 4,000 muskies caught, Mr. Jeff Hanson. And our topic tonight is 1 American and 3 Canadians talking about their differences, which sounds like it could be a dangerous show these days, but in our case, we're just going to talk about our muskie differences, his world versus our world. We're going to talk about the kinds of muskies that we fish for, the different strains of muskies. We're going to talk about musky fisheries and the ideas behind building a fishery, maintaining a fishery, managing a fishery, and how a musky fishery is supported. We're going to talk about our clubs, Muskies Canada versus Muskies Incorporated, 2 clubs with a phenomenal history, really great ideology, and some different ideas on functionality and how they actually get things done. We're going to talk about our regulations and the differences in those, the seasons, length of seasons, size limits, catch limits, to troll, not to troll, 1 rod, 2 rods, 3 rods, why, when, and where. It's different all over. And so we'll talk about how that works and how it came about. And most importantly, what you guys all want to know is tactics. One of the neat things I learned from being a guide way back is that people regionally have way different ideas about muskie behavior, muskie tactics, and how to catch muskies. And so we're going to explore the differences and the different approaches that we have in fishing heavy weeds, in fishing cover, in fishing open water. And you might be surprised at how those ideas play out. So come along with us and learn a little bit this evening. Before we bring Jeff out and I tell you a little bit more about him, let's have a quick talk about the coolest thing that's happened in the muskie world I'll say in Canada or in the US in the last couple of weeks. Last weekend, we were all at the Canadian Musky Odyssey in Peterborough, Ontario. It was done in conjunction with the CanCast fishing show, and we had 6,000 people come out to our event. A phenomenally positive, uplifting, cheerleading event. Everything musky. Mr. Steve Heiting was there as our feature speaker. We had him on the show. Terrific guy. Gentlemen, what were your impressions of the Musky Odyssey? What do you take away from that? What do you think, Brent?
Oh, it was, for me, I was away in Barbados for a week, came back on a Saturday, flew into Toronto Airport, and then I picked Steve up from the Toronto Airport, got to to Peterborough at 2:30 in the morning, got up, was at the Odyssey by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock opening. So bit of a whirlwind, and then that day just flew by. There was so much going on. The atmosphere and the buzz in the building was just crazy. I know the vendors were very happy. We had great seminar speakers. I wish I could videotape the whole day and go back and watch it, because for me it was just hosting the seminars and helping Heather a little bit with the kids zone. It was just, for me, it was a phenomenal day. Just everything went by so quick, but it's just the energy in the building was incredible.
Energy, probably if you had to attach one word to the whole show, it was just energy. Big energy, positive energy. Noah, how about you? What do you think? That's your second Odyssey.
My second Odyssey, and it was just awesome. I mean, it's the best Christmas any musky fisherman can ask for. Honestly, just being in a room with that many, thousands of like-minded people, all the talking, sharing stories. It was awesome. Every part of it was awesome.
Yeah.
Wish it could happen every day.
when you say Christmas, it's Christmas in every sense of the word, presents, and I spent way too much money shopping.
Exactly.
I think I counted coming back with 60 some in the high 60s for lures this year. The guy that sells lures, we sold a few more than I bought.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's good.
We'll leave it at that. And my find of the show, got a pair of modified Nipex, really long, because we catch Canadian-sized muskies. And when they have a lure in the back of their throat, way deep in their throat, that is tough to get to. So I was really excited to see this come out this year. Great release tool. So 2 thumbs up all around on the Odyssey, right, guys?
And I think it's perfectly timed too. I mean, it's been a long winter. We're all itching for muskie season. So, just having that show just kind of gets the itch going even more.
Yeah. Getting closer and closer.
Getting closer, yeah, for sure.
I just want to give a big shout out to Muskies Canada and the Odyssey committee and all the volunteers for putting on that event, because without them, it just doesn't happen.
The red shirts year after year after year. One comment from people, the exhibitors, is nobody's ever been to a show like that where you pull up with your vehicle and people show up and start unpacking, loading stuff to your booth. It's just incredible. Very, very, very solid team effort all around.
Yeah. And I didn't spend any money at the Odyssey because Heather didn't give me my allowance that week.
Heather knows you. So very smart. Maybe we should bring our guest out in a moment. Let me just say a couple things about Jeff before we bring him on the screen. Mention he's the owner of the Madison Guide Service in Wisconsin for over 30 years. That's a chain of about 5 lakes connected by the Yahara River system. Very highly pressured system, famous old system. He's the Muskies Incorporated international release champion 5 times. He's caught over 4,000 muskies, number one all time on the Muskies Inc. Lunge Log Seniors Division. We'll talk about what that is. He writes, he does seminars, he does muskie schools, he's done TV and videos. And so let's bring him out and talk about all of those things. Mr. Jeff Hanson, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Good to see you. I told you I was going to hit you on this on Saturday night. I was watching George Thorogood, and he was singing about the Madison Blues. And so I had to ask Google, is Madison Blues about Madison, Wisconsin? And the Google lady said, yes, John, Madison Blues is about Madison, Wisconsin. It was originally written by Elmore James in 1960, but George changed it to a girl from Madison. So you guys are supposed to be proud of that. You didn't know that?
I wasn't really aware.
That was a surprise. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm a big music fan, so that was big learning. Having George tied to your muskies, that's extra cool. School in a pool. I have to ask you about the muskie school that you just came from a couple weeks ago. Phenomenal. Tell us about what it was. Just let you talk about it for a minute, and I got a lot of questions.
Yeah, it was last week, and generally we usually average 200 students. It's been up to 280, I think, is the highest attendance that we've had. It's a 7 or 8 hour long day. You have 3 different class sessions you could choose from. Then there's a lunch there in between each one of the classes, an hour and a half, and they have usually 12 different instructors there. So there's a lot of stuff you can choose from, fly fishing to river muskies to Canadian muskies. All the instructors, including myself, are all volunteers. We donate our time to teach at that school, and all the money goes toward, a lot of the money goes towards stocking the lakes in Madison. Part of the proceeds go to it's at the Waunakee High School in Waunakee, Wisconsin. The club donates $1,000 of the proceeds to a student for a scholarship also. That's going to get into the outdoors through college or whatever. So, like I said, all the instructors are all volunteers. Like this year we had Steve Herbeck, myself, Catfish from Lake St. Clair, John Betty from Stealth Tackle. We had a ton of different instructors. Dan Small, a fly fishing instructor. So a lot of good things to learn there. And then one of the classes I teach is an hour and a half in the pool. So throw, probably, I don't know, 35, 40 different baits in the pool. And all the students are lined up across the edge of the pool and demonstrate when the lure is appropriate to use, how to use it, the proper rod and reel, line, all that to use. And then people ask questions as we're throwing the baits too. I always have questions on how to tune Suicks or stuff like that. So I demonstrate that in the pool and just show how different tweaks in the tail change the action on the Suicks.
200 people. That's phenomenal. And you said you've had up to 280 at the school in its peak.
Yep.
Fantastic. I got to say, Musky School in a pool. We used to do that for our Ottawa chapter of Muskies Canada. That was one of the best events that we ever had. So much enthusiasm, so much learning for people, getting to see the baits and how to work them in clear water. And it's something that we went away from. I'm not sure. It's obviously something we should bring back. You said seminar rooms and the pool. How many instructors in total for 200 people?
I think there was 12 or 14. I can't remember how many there was. Yeah, 12 or 14.
Okay, and a Muskies Inc. A Muskies Inc. event. How many years has this been going on?
23. And I've done 22 of the schools. One year I was gone and couldn't make it, but I've done it 22 of the last 23 years.
So you have 200 new people. I assume all these people are new to musky fishing primarily.
No, there's some people that were at the school that I talked to that have been there 20 or 21 times. A lot of people come. Like I've had some of the same people in my pool class every year that I could even remember the same guys, just because it's so informative. I mean, because I always bring the lures that are new for 2026 or the season and show everybody the new lures that are out and how to work them. And a lot of people gain knowledge from that. So there's probably half the people that are at the school are people that have been there before.
That's fantastic. And so let's get to the reason why you guys started this program.
Just there was no anything like it around, and we kind of started doing it as a fundraiser for stocking, and it's grown. I mean, the first few years there wasn't, a ton. It had a good attendance, but nowadays, I mean, it's people come from a long ways. I mean, there's people from Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, a lot of people from Illinois, a lot of people come from a long ways away for the school, and a lot of them come every year.
An event like that teaches people handling and release, especially when you've got new people. That's so critical to looking after your fishery. Teaches people a reverence for muskies, that this very much is catch and release, and that this is supported. And there's a lot of people involved in supporting it. And let's talk about the money and the stocking aspect of it for a moment. People in Canada will find that really interesting because we don't stock anywhere for any reason right now. And so a lot of American fisheries are supported by stocking. You guys are so good at growing muskies and stocking muskies and knowing what strains to put in. Let's talk a bit about that, about funding it from this event and what you actually do. Yeah,
I mean, this event helps a lot, but there's a lot of other big fundraisers that we do throughout the year. And we get a lot of donations from bigger companies that give us money for stocking too. I mean, a few of my sponsors donate some money too for stocking, which helps out. But the last few years, especially since COVID, the Department of Natural Resources just hasn't had the funding to pay for a lot of the stocking. I mean, part of the reason is because Wisconsin, they won't do a license increase. So if they're not gaining any more revenue, it's hard for them to pay for muskie stocking. So the DNR is only stocking these lakes here in Madison, or a lot of the lakes in southern Wisconsin, every other year. So every other year, our club, the Cap City chapter, Muskies Inc, is responsible for stocking all the fish. And last year, our bill for stocking fish was $53,000, which we all raised through things like the Muskie School and generous donations from club members and corporations, and a lot of different fundraising events that we do, like holding tournaments and stuff like that to raise money for stocking.
That's fantastic. So you stock 5 lakes. Your share is $53,000 that your club puts in basically every second year, and the DNR picks up the tab in the other years.
Yeah, we'll end up still stocking some, because like the Leech Lake strain of muskies that we get from the Minnesota Muskie Farm, the DNR won't pay to stock those. And if there's any room left in their quota, then we'll get some Leech Lake strain fish and stock those ourselves, so that we get those put in every year, because we only get like 400 or 500 of them a year.
So you'll actually put different strains into the same lake, Jeff?
Yes, correct. We've been doing, I think this year will be the 14th year study. I have a pit tag reader, a wand, that when I catch a muskie, I run it over it and it beeps, and then I record the information and turn it into the Muskie Club and the DNR. There's 3 different strains of muskies, actually 4 different strains of muskies that they're stocking in the lakes now. They're trying to figure out which ones are doing better. They could already tell that the Leech Lake strain fish are getting to 40 inches a year or 2 faster than the rest of the strains of the fish, and they're getting longer. Very few Wisconsin strain fish are getting over 50 inches long. Yes, we get a few, but the Leech Lake strain fish, a lot higher percentage of them are getting over 50 inches long. We've gotten a few fish up to the biggest I've had in the boat's 53, but I know of one other 53 and a half that was caught, and those are the 2 biggest ones that I know of that are caught in Madison, and those were 13 or 14-year-old fish.
So when you catch a fish, you can quite often tell which strain it is.
Yeah, I can tell just by looking at them.
Wow, interesting.
And now you had a pit tag reader, a wand. Do you, any chance you have that handy?
No, that's out in my boat out in the shop. I think Noah has part of video of me using it at some point that you guys will see.
Okay, so to explain, we had this conversation, Jamie Sebastian in our Ottawa chapter of Muskies Inc. We're going to buy 3 pit tag readers as community use pit tags for our people that are fishing the St. Lawrence, because we want to read tags that were put in the fish's nose. A pit tag is placed in a fish's nose when they are juveniles, and that pit tag can be read throughout the fish's life. You scan the fish's nose, and it will read the information that's on that tag and tell you where it's from. For us, where it's from and what year it went in, maybe even where it was stocked, and for you, year and strain.
Yeah, they'll say strain, the year that it was stocked, and some of them will get pit tagged that they do electro fishing surveys, and they'll measure them and inject a tag in them. Ours, they shoot into the syringe, but they do it in their belly. So when I'm scanning them, I'm scanning the belly of the fish. So those ones, they wouldn't know what the strain is necessarily, but when the ones that they stock, they know exactly what strain those are when if they're putting pit tags in the stock fish.
Wow, an incredible amount of effort. Do you have any reproduction in your system? Any natural reproduction in your
Zero.
system?
Yeah, none that's been proven whatsoever.
And muskies are natural to the fish, to the system, correct?
No, they originally started to be stocked in the early 80s. I think 82 or 83 was the first stockings here in Madison. So they've been stocked since the beginning.
Okay, so it's a built fishery. Yes. Okay, interesting. Were you around when it was built?
Yeah. I started muskie fishing in 1984, 83 or 84. And they were just getting introduced here. So it's better muskie fishing now than it's ever been, especially a few years ago. The Cap City chapter got the DNR to put a 50-inch size limit on the Madison chain, and that's helped us tremendously too, having that high size limit. We're one of the few places in Wisconsin that has a 50-inch size limit. There's a few other lakes up north, but not a lot.
I couldn't agree more. In Muskies Canada, we have the world-class muskie fishery designated with 54-inch size limit. And so when that was first became a designation, we had to collect Clithrum bones and prove world record growth potential, and then establish the 54-inch limit. And when you do that, you make it a big fish fishery. You make it that much better. And so, are there a lot of people who still eat muskies in Wisconsin?
No, not really, not that I know of. I mean, I haven't heard much of that since the 80s. So,
okay.
And the people that are doing that are people that incidental catches, like somebody fishing for walleyes or bass catches one, but musky fishermen are never keeping them.
Yeah, I know we like to think that we're all catch and release all the time, but some of the size limits in Ontario were smaller so that people can take fish home. I don't know. Do you know what our smallest size limit is now, Brent? 40?
I think one area, and it's just one area. One of our FMZ's fishery management zones is still 36 inches.
One is still 36, and
that's still better. When I first started musky fishing back in 1986, I believe, or 86, 85, it was 28 inches was our size limit. So it's still better than that, but I believe there are people through Muskies Canada that have been working on increasing that size limit.
Yeah, bigger size limits mean bigger fish for all of us. And so I Googled some stats earlier today just because Wisconsin and Ontario are similar in that they're both the epicenter of the muskie world in our country. And so let's see how important muskie fishing is to where we live. In Wisconsin, $2.3 billion US is raised through recreational fishing every year. $600 million or close to $1 billion Canadian is specifically what the muskie fishery generates. 25% of all fishing trips in the state of Wisconsin are muskie trips. And so that's huge input into that economy. In Ontario, in Canada, recreational fishing is $8.8 billion. Ontario, $2.2 billion is raised from recreational sport fishing. So the value of the fishery, the same in Ontario, the same in Wisconsin. The difference, 6 million people live in Wisconsin, 16 in Ontario. 15,000 lakes in Wisconsin, 250,000 in Ontario. So we're 7.7 times bigger, tons more lakes. Your crowd is so much bigger, so much denser. Muskie fishing is just so big in Wisconsin. Those numbers really demonstrate to anybody who thinks that muskie fishing is just recreational. Those are huge dollar values. And when we talk about the stocking money that goes into that, and the support behind it, it's an industry that's really important, and one that's growing. Is muskie fishing still growing in Wisconsin?
Oh yeah. There's more guys muskie fishing now than there ever has been, without a doubt. Really, and in Ontario too. I mean, since the onset of COVID, there were 50% more licenses bought the first year or two after COVID, as families saw and people saw it, getting back to nature and activities they could do around a lot of other people. It's funny, interestingly, as fishing has declined, the popularity of fishing has declined. Overall, the popularity of muskie fishing is still just absolutely on a rocket ride in Wisconsin and in Ontario. And we all know why, don't we?
Because of people like us promoting it.
Yeah, well, all you have to do is catch a all you have to do is catch one muskie to have the addiction, and it's lifelong. We all know that. Let's talk for a minute or two about the difference between Muskies Incorporated and Muskies Canada. And so the lunge log program in the States, you have over 4,000 muskies, you're number one all time. Talk about the lunge log program and the point system in Muskies Incorporated for a minute.
When you catch a muskie that's 30 inches long, you get 4 points for it. And then every inch, or actually half inch, like a 30.5-inch fish would be worth 5 points. And that just, you register each one of your fish where it was caught. And then it gets put into a huge database in Muskies Inc. International. So anybody can go back and look at Like if you're coming to a lake to fish, you can look at that lake's registered fish and get tons of information on colors. Because when you register your fish, you put what color bait you caught it on, what bait you caught it on. So it's more of a learning tool for anybody to use on the internet that's a member of Muskies Inc.
Wow. So your entry has the body of water and what you caught it on.
Yep. I'm honest about what I catch them on, but I'm sure a lot of other people put BS information in there.
Yeah, I
You're
can
not
recall.
saying fishermen are liars, are you?
A few maybe.
I can recall a time where there was a fight over the word unspecified going into logs. I don't know if you remember that. There was
Yeah. That Muskies Inc. doesn't allow that anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And so it's a system for everybody. And so what you have monthly prizes for a chapter for most points, biggest fish?
For the biggest fish of the month, they do lunker of the month. And then for the year long, it's most total, or like they'll do for us, the biggest local fish that caught in the Madison chain. Then they do another award for the biggest fish caught elsewhere, like in Canada or wherever anybody else went on vacation and caught a big one. Then they do an award for the biggest tiger. Also, they got a men's division, a women's division, a juniors division, a men's masters division, and they actually have a fly division now also.
Fantastic. Does the lunch log program help in creating rules in managing fisheries? Do you use it for that at all?
Yeah, they do look at that just for numbers of fish, or whether fish are on the increase or the decline, so that they can adjust stocking tendencies.
Do you enter trips that you go out and don't catch fish?
No.
Okay. It's a primary difference then between the Canadian, the Muskies Canada log program and the Muskies Inc. program, and that we work towards a CPU, a catch per unit effort. And so when you go on a muskie trip, you enter that day. 2 anglers for 8 hours is 16 hours of angling. You didn't catch any fish. That still goes in the log, and then we work that down to how many hours, how many rod hours it takes to catch a muskie on a body of water, and then use that as a gauge to determine if it's getting easier or harder, if it's a good year or a bad year, and we look for trends that way. And so we actually work with the Ministry of Natural Resources in Ontario towards establishing size limits, shutting down fisheries if they get to be in trouble. So yeah, similar log programs, similar reasons, not exact for sure. The aspect of competition that you have is interesting. I wonder if people like to compete, and I wonder if we missed a little bit of that in Muskies Canada. We have outings. We certainly have a lot of outings in the Ottawa chapter. We'd have a half a dozen outings. We'd have a half a dozen outings through the year, but we're not really prize based. There's just one prize, more or less, at each of the outings. It's felt that if there's prizes associated with catching, that handling gets compromised because you keep, and in this day, it's amazing that you still read about weights in walleyes or people catching fish out of season and promoting themselves with them, or it still goes on. So, but I wonder, to our audience out there, one thing I didn't say at the start of the show is if you have any questions for any of us, for Jeff, or any comments on any of the topics that we're discussing, please send them in. If we don't get them on the air and talk about them today, we will certainly get back to you in the next few days about them. Noah sees them all coming in. And so, got anything at this point, Noah?
A couple. I did write that exact same thing you just said. So everyone that's been watching has seen my comment. I basically said the same thing. I do have one. It's kind of more of a basic question, but any tips for super high pressured waters? Who wants to answer that one? Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, just downsizing more than anything, and then don't be afraid. You know, we're going to get into talking here about fishing in heavy weeds. A lot of guys don't want to do it just because you got to pick baits off on every cast or weeds off on every other cast or every cast, and people aren't willing to do that. So that's a lot of times where these fish will bury. I mean, any time of the year too, they can be in the heavy weeds. But moving baits fast too, or just using different baits that other people aren't using is another big one.
That's a good question to kick off. Maybe the differences in our fishing. You're talking about fishing pressure. So let's talk about how our worlds are a little bit different. Let's talk about what pressure means in Wisconsin versus what pressure means in Ontario. And so, what does pressure mean to you on your lake? Describe one of the lakes that you like to fish in terms of size, and how many people would go out and fish for muskies on that lake in a day?
Let's talk about, I guess, let's say Lake Wabeesa. That's one of the more pressured lakes. It's like 2,600 acres, and there'll be on a slow day 5 boats, and on like a Saturday there'll be 40 boats musky fishing on that lake.
So how big a lake is, you said what, 2,300 acres? How big a lake is
2,600 acres?
2,600. How big a lake is that? We don't talk acres too much in Canada. And
yeah, how many miles long by miles wide? Whatever.
Probably a mile and a half long by a mile wide.
Mile and a half long by a mile and a half wide with 40 musky boats on it.
Yeah,
on a weekend.
Yeah, sometimes more. I mean, if it's the bite's been on and people have been bragging on Facebook that they've been catching fish, there'll be a lot more guys out. I mean, there could be 50, 60 boats.
Wow.
Okay. So there's a lot of jaw-dropped people right now in Ontario when because what we call pressure, when we see another boat off in the distance, that pisses us off. That's pressure. That's somebody else fishing our area, fishing stuff, and pressure changes everything in my world. And we look for unpressured fish, so two completely different realities. And so your idea is to go get lost in the weeds when you have a lot of pressure. Is that right?
Yeah, that or open just fishing spots that other guys aren't fishing. I mean, there'll be guys that'll just get on some of the weed beds and get on the weed edge, and they'll go right in the line, right down the edge of the weeds, which makes absolutely no sense. If I see somebody going down the weed edge, I'm either going to go inside of where they're at if I'm the next person down that line, or go way outside, a cast and a half outside of where they're at. I just kind of shake my head and see these guys will get in lines. There'll be 5, 6 boats in a row on the same exact line going down the weed bed doing the same exact thing. So that's not going to be very productive for you.
Ontario fishermen are just like that too. They get in a line on the outside because the weeds, the fish are in one of 3 places. As a guide, I always say that the three-prong riddle. They're on the weed edge, they're out off of the weeds, or they're in the weeds thicker. And if everybody else is already on the edge, don't do that.
Yeah,
don't do that. So what do you do when you go in the weeds? It was neat talking to you earlier. I'll preface that because it was neat talking to you earlier in the week, because you have some different ideas and use some different baits and strategies than we do. So what do you like to do?
I'll position the boat and put it right in the dead center of the weeds. And I'll have, because I always am guiding 2 people at a time, and I'll have one throwing off one side and one throwing off the other side of the boat. And if, depending on how thick the weed, if they're super, super thick, then I'm throwing spinner baits or weedless spoons like Dr. spoons, or used to use a lot of Johnson Silver minnows, but I really like the Dr. spoons better. With the pattern on them, catch a lot of fish on those, and that's a bait that a lot of fish don't see. And the key is making short casts, and that's what is really hard on some fishermen, is they always got to make bomb casts. And when you're fishing in that heavy cover, you got to cut your weeds or your casts in half, otherwise you're picking weeds all the time. And don't be afraid to to fish pockets and cast, make short casts. I mean, I use a lot of different stuff in the weeds. I mean, just one of the ones I use for short pitch, and I use in open water too, is a twisted tube from Red October. They make there's a 10-inch twisted tube. A lot of guys, the other tubes from Red October are world famous, and everybody's used them, but it's weird. Not a lot of guys use the twisted tubes. I prefer the twisted tubes. I've got just piles of muskies on these, and that's something that the fish aren't used to seeing. And these have a lot slower fall, so you could work these. Just talk about fishing them in the weeds now. You make short casts with them and keep them within the top foot of the water, ripping up on the rod, really, really easy. And they have 3 different weights of these. They have a lightweight, a midweight, and a heavyweight. A heavyweight would be more for working and jigging and current, but I like using the midweight ones. I can just work up on the rod. Sometimes I'll use the lightweight ones too. Either one is good, but that's a bait the fish aren't used to seeing, definitely in the weeds. Another one I really like throwing in the weeds a lot is a crankbait. This is a wake shad from Musky Train. Team Rhino has these, and these came out last year. It's a cedar bait, and we have a lot of panfish in our system, so it's a panfish profile, and that shallow diving lip on it that you can see is really, really short. So if you're really cranking down on this bait, you can only get it down 16, 17 inches maybe. And if you hold your rod tip up high, it stays right up on top of the water, and it really has a really wide wobble back and forth, and the fish will come shooting out of the heavy weeds and hit it just like a topwater bait. That's been an absolute killer for me, especially if I'm guiding kids or people that don't fish a lot. The wake shad is really easy to use because it doesn't sink down into the weeds. So if people have a slower retrieve, it's not getting into the weeds on them. I had a lot of kids. My daughter got 48, 49 inches on these. They're super easy to use. And a lot of people don't throw crankbaits in the weeds. It's as simple as that. Another really good one in the weeds for me is Suicks. If I'm fishing the heavier weeds, I really like a 9-inch high impact. You can see this one's been absolutely slaughtered. I think this one's got 53 muskies on it. These are really, really good to use in the heavy weeds. But the key with that is using and making short casts. That's the hardest thing guiding people, is getting them to make short casts in that heavy cover. Because even if you see a small pocket, I mean, a 10-foot, 15-foot cast flipped into that pocket is really important when you're going through those thick weeds. And those fish just aren't seeing very many baits.
10 and 15-foot casts. That's really hard for most musky guys to make because they want to throw 80 and 100 feet. 10 or 15 feet doesn't seem to make much sense. You're basically flipping for muskies, right?
Yeah, a lot of times. Yeah, for sure. If there's bigger pockets, certainly you can make 40, 50-foot long casts, but very rarely am I making a cast over 50 feet long when I'm fishing those heavy weeds.
You were saying about using the high impact there, Jeff. Is there a reason you used the high impact compared to the original wooden driller?
We had talked about this before when Steve Suick first told me that they were coming out with a plastic Suick. I'm like, oh, no. I can't believe this is happening. But boy, I got one in my hands. It took me a year of using it to really, really fall in love with it. They can be more erratic than some of the wood ones. And they're like when I get wood Suicks, I get weighted ones. So the high impact is kind of the buoyancy in between a weighted and an unweighted. So they're really, really good to work in thicker weeds. Both the 9 and 10 high impact are really good for that. And one key with those is always put a split ring on the front of them. You get more side to side action out of them too. And I don't know if you can see in the.
That's a good tip.
Not, but I kind of have the tail cupped. I put my thumb in the center of it, and then I bend it around my thumb, and that cups or makes like a spoon effect in it, and that gets it going side to side too. I mean, most people think a dive and rise is just a perfect dive and rise every time. I like my Suicks kicking out to the left and kicking out to the right. So if you put a number 7 split ring on them and tune that tail like I just showed you guys, you get a lot more side to side out of it too. So it just blows my mind that at some of these musky shows, there's guys spending over $100 on a dive and rise bait, and you could spend $30 on a Suick and get the best dive and rise bait that's ever been made. I mean, I've been using them since I was a kid, and that is a staple in my boat for sure.
They haven't changed for years, and all they do is catch fish.
Yep. My best one, I don't know if you guys can see it or not. This 10-inch weighted Suick has 86 Muskies on it. It used to be bronze perch colored. Now it looks like a dog chewed on it, but that's for Muskies.
But it just keeps working.
I think it looks a little more beat up than this one. Just a little bit, though.
I gave that one to Noah last spring, though, so that's pretty good for 1 year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was new.
I was just going to ask that, Noah. One thing I like about when you're talking about how you cup the tail there, Jeff, how you get that little bit more side to side on it.
Yep.
We all know Muskie likes to grab the bait as close to the head as possible. That just gives a following fish, he sees it sideways there. It gives him a chance to grab that bait.
Yes, absolutely. Because when a wounded fish is coming along, it's just not doing a perfect dive and rise every time. It's kicking off to the left and to the right. And you're exactly right. When it's making that kick off to the left, a lot of times that's when they overtake it and eat it.
So you say when it kicks up, do you find a difference if it hits it when it goes to the left more than it goes to the right?
No.
Just when it kicks off. Okay.
Yeah, either one. Yeah, they're not left-handed or right-handed Muskies. So
yeah, I just thought this might have been a really interesting observation. That's all.
Yeah, no.
50-50, Brent.
This was a great question that just came in now while we were talking about it.
Yeah.
Dean asked, if I'm using a split ring on my leader, would I add a second split ring on the nose of the Suick for action, or is one on the leader enough?
No, one on the leader is enough. Like when I have John from Stealth Tackle make my leaders, I don't use snaps at all. All my leaders come with a welded ring on there. Like you can order them from Team Rhino or any of the muskie shops with the welded rings on them too. But every lure, when I take it out of the package, I put a split ring on it. Bucktails and stuff like that's not going to make much of a difference on, but jerk baits, rubber, like Weagles or Walk the Dog style One-Eyed Willies baits, or any of the rubber baits, you get more side to side or more action out of them with a split ring on them. So even if I'm using snaps, which I don't use, you'd still want a split ring on there, but I connect everything with the split ring pliers because I won't use snaps at all. I haven't used a snap in 15 years due to failures in the past. So, but yeah, put a split ring in all your baits and you get better action out of them.
Yeah.
That's a good tip right there.
I do that with my tubes, especially. I always throw a split ring on the nose of a tube, just because I find without it, if you are using a snap, you'll find it turning a lot when you rip up on it. A split ring helps it definitely stay more, having the hooks on the bottom and stuff like that. So I always throw a split ring on all my tubes.
Yeah, you mentioned about that wake bait there, your daughter catching a couple of big fish on there. I heard last week I was talking to a fella that mentioned your daughter's caught some pretty big fish.
Yeah, she just turned 13. She's already caught 2 muskies over 50 casting. A lot of people, like, and I talk about her, they assume that she caught all these big fish trolling. No, she gets some casting.
That's awesome.
That I was mentioned you guys before. She had a hell of a day last August. I always take her out for a day before school starts for the year, and we had an incredible 4.5 hours of fishing. She ended up catching 6 that morning. She had a 36, 38, 40 and a half, 48, a 49, and a 50 and a quarter. The 48, the 49, and a 50 and a quarter all came within about 50 minutes of one another, all in heavy weeds. Everything we caught we caught one on top water in the morning, but the rest of them were caught on 8 spankies. So they were chowing. I think I only ended up catching 2, but she had the hot spanky, and they were crushing it. But yeah, she's got two muskies over 50. Pretty good for a 12-year-old.
Not a bad day to be a net man.
Yeah, for sure.
How fantastic getting outfished by a 13-year-old. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. She was 12 at the time, but yeah, the one on the left there is her 50 and a quarter, and then the time I took her out before that, she got that big tiger on a spanky also.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
That's a beautiful looking fish.
Going back to the weeds, just to step back for a second, and then we've got a video that shows what you were talking about in tuning. But one question that we get from people all the time when they bring their bait in and it's got a little weed on it, is I didn't figure eight, or a comment or a question. I didn't figure eight because it had a weed on it. So do you figure eight with weeds on your bait?
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably the biggest mistake that I have customers make. And I tell them right away when they get in the boat, figure eight no matter what. If you got a 10-pound ball of weeds on there, that's one thing. But if you have a handful of weeds, or especially one little tiny weed on there, figure eight every single time. The fish don't care that the weeds are on there. They don't mind having salad with their lunch. They have no idea what it is. If it's in the water and it's moving, it's food. So that's probably the biggest mistake I see musky fishermen make is they pull their bait out of the water because it's got weeds on it.
Do you rip weeds? Do you rip baits through weeds on purpose?
Yes, all the time. Like, Suicks all the time. The twisted tubes from Red October. Another one I really like jigging in the weeds is a Big Joe. These were actually the first soft plastic that was ever made for muskies. These have been made since 1984. Musky Innovations owns those now, but that's another bait that the fish don't see a lot of. And I'll do a lot of bass style fishing with the weeds in the weeds with those, making 10 or 15 foot long casts and then ripping them through the weeds, and get a lot of reaction strikes that way.
A lot of musky fishermen don't like weeds on their lure and avoid weeds. I learned that from my American customers going back 30 years ago about, I think the comments were, we were throwing a weed bed and somebody said, we wouldn't have that weed bed on my home lake because people would have dragged enough suicks through it that they would have ripped it all up, going right through the weeds. And so why? Because for us, I was fishing the edge of the weeds and around the weeds, but not rip it, go right through it, get it as dirty as you can, and that pulls your fish out. That works, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yes. Cold fronts is a major time to do. If you're not doing that in cold fronts, you're not catching fish.
Absolutely in the thick weeds. And you mentioned downsizing too. Smaller suicks then?
Yeah. I'll use there's a 7-inch weighted Suick, and I do the same thing with that. Put the bend in the tail of it, and then that's still got a number 7 split ring on the front of it. One other thing I like to do with the 7-inch Suicks is I'll put the next size up, bigger hooks on there too. That adds a little bit more weight to them, and seems to the hookups kind of increase in them a little bit too. So that seems to help with the 7-inch Suicks. But I usually use those a lot in May, and then I'll use them during the summer if we get some kind of cold front or something, because downsizing definitely helps. And cold fronts or high pressure situations where there's a ton of guys out musky fishing, then a lot of times I'll downsize my baits also.
Okay, John, have you noticed this is our second guest who's talked about the 7-inch Suick?
Yeah, we should probably try that.
We should probably get a few of those.
We should probably try it.
I always tease my guests and say, we're fishing for Canadian size muskies, man. It's got to be 12 inches long. So, but there's definitely a time for the smaller baits. You talked about going into open water when you had pressure. What are you doing out in your open water?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to cast it, I'll spend the time, drive around, find the heaviest concentrations of bait that you can. Early season, especially, a lot of times the biggest fish will be out in that open water too. And the biggest mistake people make when they're fishing that open water is they try and fish too deep. If it's calm out, a lot of times those fish, even if they're out in 40, 50 feet of water, will be in the top 5 feet of the water. The water warms the fastest up high early season, and the fish will be definitely within the top 10 feet of the water. And if it's calm, I'll definitely fish higher baits. And if it's rougher, then I'll fish deeper. But again, one of my favorite ones in open water is the twisted tube from Red October. These are just such a slow fall rate, and you could work them up high. Not last year, the year before, the biggest fish in my boat in May, which was a 49-incher caught on a Red October twisted tube. It was in 42 feet of water, threw the bait out, and it hit the water and didn't even get a pull on it, and that fish was already on it. So I guess the biggest mistake people make in fishing that open water is trying to fish too deep. They're fishing underneath the muskies. And then plus the muskies' eyes are on the top of their heads. They're always looking up. You're always better off fishing above the fish than below them, without a doubt. Early season, the water's clear. They will come a very long ways for a bait. So caution wise, keep your baits up high.
That's an interesting point because there are a lot of people who are fishing down 13, 15, 20 feet of water a lot of the time when they're out in open water. And so that high troll, that's not something that we do a lot. Something maybe I should do a little bit more.
I was gonna say that last year I caught a fish trolling in September. I was trolling a weed edge and I was doing a wrap around and had a pretty steep drop off, but I was well into 24, 25 feet of water trolling with one of our hybrid spinner baits. And that had to have been running within a foot or two of the water column. And I marked a really big fish right down at the bottom in about 24, 25 feet. And sure enough, she came screaming up and boom, got that fish. So 24, 25 feet, she heard that bait at the surface and yeah, it came up. When you think about it, it's really not that far for a muskie to travel. If you have a 4-foot fish, you know.
Oh, it's a couple of hooks of the tail.
Yeah. 4 or 5 body lengths in that deep of water. So they know it's there 100%.
Think about when you got a lot of pressure on a fish and he takes you from the front of the boat all the way to the back of the boat in a mere second.
Exactly.
With pressure on him. He wants to come out 25 feet from the bottom and to come up to smash something by the surface. It's just,
yeah.
He's there instantly, pretty much, just a second or two.
Exactly.
What about playing a video?
Sure.
I think we have a video. We should probably play that. You want to? This is a tuning video.
The tuning video,
which is appropriate because we get questions every episode about tuning Suicks, and so.
All right, we're going to go through one of my all-time favorite baits. I've been throwing these since I was a kid. Is the Suick Musky Thriller. Early in the season, I throw the 7-inchers. I pretty much work them the same way, whether it's a 7-incher, a 9-incher, or a 10-incher. These are really easy to tune. With all of mine, you can see I make a cup and spoon the tail and make it have a little bit of a bend both ways. So many people have problems tuning Suicks. That'll really help. It cups more water, gives it a more aggressive dive and even more side-to-side action. I do that on every Suick. The minute I take it out of the box, I put my thumb in the middle of it and bend it around, and it's a lot easier to tune that way. So many people over-tune them or bend them so much. It's just slight modifications in your Suick do such just a subtle change makes a big difference in it. Usually May, June, I'm throwing the 9, then a lot of the rest of the year I'm throwing the 10s. But if a cold front comes along or the fish is a little bit slower, I'll go back to the 9. But catch a lot of fish on both of them. You can't go wrong with either size. And to throw them, really easy to use. I'm using a 7.6 extra heavy jerkbait rod, nothing special with the reel. I'm just using a Shimano 400B, just a standard speed retrieve. And I'm using 80-pound high seas Grand Slam braid line, and just short pulls. The biggest thing with these is guys working them doing too long of pulls, and you end up with a lot of slack line in them, and you miss a lot of fish that way. I'm just doing a couple foot-long pulls, diving that thing down, and just real important, keeping a tight line on it. Then when I figure eight them, I'm almost figure eight just like a bucktail. I'm not doing a lot of jerking with that rod in the water, because otherwise you're making a lot of commotion and spooking fish sometimes. It's just sometimes a straight figure eight just like a bucktail seems to be better off. You're not getting that slack line. Like I said, if you're doing this and getting slack, you're going to miss a lot of bites on it. You see my line's tight the whole entire time. And if you feel anything funny, set the hooks on them. If you have a lot of big fish come from the side or come from behind them and overtake them, and all of a sudden you just feel like there's nothing there. So make sure you're setting the hooks on them. But yeah, Suick's one of my favorite all-time baits, and caught a lot of muskies. They put a lot of fish in the boat for me and clients. Top producer for me.
Well done. Interesting that you bend the corners down. You do it with your thumb. First person to teach me that was a guy named Todd Kotarski, phenomenal fisherman, great guy out of the Chicago area. And again, regional. And so it took somebody from that part of the world showing me, oh, okay, that's how you do it. That's what you do. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say that's a common way that people modify their baits up here, but.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'll have last year I had a guy customer show up with 10 Suicks for me to tune for him, and he had some of them bent with the pliers and just had them, the tails just almost destroyed on them. I just shake my head. I mean, it's just slight modifications on there that you do with your hands does a lot.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
Yep. And one other really good tip with Suicks that not a lot of guys do too is, I don't know if you guys have ever used weighted leaders. Like this is a 1 ounce weighted leader that Stealth Tackle makes. They make a half, 3/4, or 1 ounce. But if I'm throwing a 10 or 9-inch Suick, I really like put a 1 ounce weighted leader on there. Even though this is a weighted 9-inch Suick, this 1 ounce weighted leader will get the Suick down another 3 feet on a 9-incher and about another 2 feet with a 10-inch Suick. And so I can make contact with a lot deeper weeds than what other people are with their Suicks. And that weighted leader almost acts like a hinge too. So when you jerk it, it'll shoot off to the side and it'll kick the bait off more left and right too, and makes it more head heavy. Totally changes the hop in it. So on pressured fish, a lot of them aren't used to seeing that. Those weighted leaders help put a lot of fish in the boat for sure with them Suicks.
That's fantastic. I've never seen a weighted leader like that, but I had a guy that worked with us, great guy named Mike Kadura, for a number of years. And he used to take his short casting leaders and put a bell sinker out on the front, on the split ring out on the front, and achieve the same action as that. And the one thing that's neat is now all of a sudden your Suick is diving nose first and it's traveling nose first. It's got a really different look to it with that weight out in front. And I think that was Mike's favorite technique in late October, November for Muskies casting his Suick, not the big Suicks. I like Franken Suicks and weighted Suicks at the end of the year, but the Franken Suicks, especially with the weight system, where you can modify it just to have almost neutral buoyancy or have your bait going down. But the weighted leader to be able to access much deeper water, terrific idea.
I've actually put the leader on the line itself. And then what happens is when you give your Suick a pull, it dives down, of course, then it'll rise up a little bit, just the length of your leader. And if you got it weighted right, it'll just sit there, which is really effective in the fall, having that bait just hang there. So it becomes pretty much neutral buoyant. You pull it down, it'll raise up the length of your leader and just sit there. So, which, as you know, in the fall, that longer pause, especially during a cold front, can really pay off. Keeping that bait right in front of the fish's face just a little bit longer.
Yeah, I definitely put a lot of fish in the boat with those weighted leaders. I've been using them for 20 years, and I had Stealth Tackle start making them. Well, God, it's probably been 14 years since he's been making them. But you could use them on bucktails too, help keep your bucktails down. I'll throw them a lot on bulldogs too. It's a pretty versatile tool that you can use to help get your baits down deep. It's swimming dogs too. That's another one, or swim baits, really good one for that too. To help keep them down another foot or two when you're bringing them in. But I really like it on bucktails because you can burn bucktails and keep them down a little bit further with that 1 ounce weighted leader.
Yeah, you're teaching us. That's good. That's good. That's what we're here for. We're all here for. Let's talk about some different rules in Wisconsin for a moment. I was always amazed growing up hearing different rules for different parts of the state. You can troll, you can't troll, you can troll if you row, you can row troll with 3 rods. What are the different rules that you have in different areas?
Oh man, yeah. The northern half of the state, you can roll troll anywhere, but the rest of the lakes, you can troll 1 line per person with a max of 3 in the boat. But where I'm at in the Madison area in southern Wisconsin, you can run 3 lines per person.
And you control with the motor where you are.
Yes. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, so what we have here is if you're on the Great Lakes, like Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, you can use 2 rod, or even St. Clair actually, which isn't a Great Lake, but you can use 2 rod per person as long as you're on the lake itself. Any of our inland lakes or anything else, it's 1 rod per person, whether you're casting or trolling.
Yeah.
What about live bait in Wisconsin?
Um,
Sucker fishing, that's big.
yeah, where I'm at, it's not as big as some other areas. I didn't sucker fish at all last year. I had a really good trolling bite, so I wasn't running suckers, and suckers have gotten harder to run here because of Eurasian milfoil. It's hard to keep the suckers out of that, but northern Wisconsin and some other areas of Wisconsin, it's really, really good. Just northern Wisconsin, can only run one sucker per person or whatever. Down here, you can run 3 per person. But I don't do a ton of sucker fishing. I spend more time trolling in the fall than live bait, but it's certainly very productive way to catch muskies.
Interesting. Sucker fishing is kind of viewed as taboo by a lot of musky fishermen in Ontario, just because it's I guess it goes back to the older days where you used to let a muskie take your sucker and hold it for 5 minutes to ensure you were going to get the hook set. And so just because we have all naturally reproducing fisheries, there's not a ton of people that sucker fish. And on the river, on the Ottawa River, out in front of my house right here, there's a line down the middle of the river that if you're in Quebec and you're fishing with live bait, you can lose your boat and all your tackle. And so there's good incentive just to not go out on the river with live bait, whether it's looking after the fish or not losing all your stuff. Both are good reasons, but yeah, they work.
I think another reason that musky fishermen here don't use a lot of suckers is if you're in, just for example, our Kawartha Lakes, which are north of Toronto here, you can only use one rod. So if you're sucker fishing, you got one rod per person out, and that's it. And you can't be active. You can't be casting another rod or anything. So just being limited to that one rod, I think, has an effect on that as well here.
Then you're just gonna sit and watch your sucker, which musky guys have ADD, and we got to be doing something fast all the time. What we do, right? So yeah, that's tough. Maybe when it's colder and you're just sitting trying to stay warm, makes more sense. But
this conversation just made me think about as when we're guiding, I mean, sometimes we're casting with our clients, but most of the time we're not. Me and John have a couple different techniques as far as what we do if we are able to have an extra rod out. There's a specific lure. It's called a Bessie. And I've done that a couple times where I'll just put that in the rod holder in the back and it has a great action there. But John, I was going to ask, do you want to talk about your new little?
Nope, not yet. Not yet.
All right.
Gonna catch
you for a later time, but
gonna catch some fish on that first, and yeah, I think
John has a new special.
I think I bought some.
Way to put your boss on the spot there, Noah.
I think I bought some dynamite at the Odyssey last week, so I'm gonna go out and give that a try. Some real and some legal dynamite. And so, is there another question or two, Noah?
Yes, there's lots. Let me look through. Colors. James never knows what color to use. Does lure color depend more on water visibility or weather?
Water visibility for sure. We get a pretty heavy algae bloom. And actually I got a good one here that's called UAF. The initials stand for something which isn't I can't say it on the first two words are ugly S, and I won't say what the last one is, but this one is this is actually a Team Rhino custom color. This one is absolutely lethal in any dark green stain or a brown stain. Actually, I have some customers of mine that have bought those and took them to Lake of the Woods and did extremely well on them. But yeah, if the water's dirtier, I tend to use really, really bright stuff like that UAF Suick's just an absolute killer.
What do you talk about algae? Talk about algae bloom for a moment. So we have very rarely do we have algae blooms up here. More than we used to, but it's not something we deal with typically in this end of country. How often do you have algae blooms?
Every
Do you
year.
stay away from them every year?
Yeah, you can't.
A number of times through the year.
Usually they'll start showing up whenever it starts getting hot. Generally, the second to third week of June we'll get it, and we'll have a pretty heavy algae bloom all the way through mid-August, towards the end of August. So some of the lakes it's worse than others. And if we don't have a lot of wind, if we have a bunch of days with 5 mile an hour or less winds, then the algae gets really heavy. And there'll be times that you can see 4 inches in the water, maybe.
Wow. So do you avoid that? How do you fish that differently?
I'll really pay attention to what the wind was doing from the day before. Let's say we had a north wind for 2 days prior. I'll just basically fish the north ends of the lake, because most of the heavy algae will be blown down to the south end of the lake. Just the opposite. If we had the south winds the day before, I'm going to fish the south ends of the lake, because the heavy algae will be blown up to the other end of the lake. I mean, the fish are still in it. They still got to eat every day. You just got to adapt and fish baits through it that you have confidence in, like that UAF Suick, or I'll throw really bright colored spankies or whatever. Just seems to help get bites in that heavy algae.
Is it worse or better fishing, or the same in algae blooms?
It's the same. It's that's not true. You see less fish just because you can't see them. A lot of times you can't see follows, so you'll have a lot of fish scare the crap out of you at the boat. You don't ever see coming because there's too heavy algae, and you go into your figure eight, and they just come out of nowhere and eat it.
All right.
Just to touch on the water, water visibility or weather. On just taking a page out of your book there, John. On those real bright days, if you're throwing blades, you want to throw something really bright with a lot of flash on it, that disco ball. So they see it, they want to eat it, but they can't really hone in on and figure out what it is.
Exactly.
So if it's a really bright day, real high skies, whatever, if you're throwing blades, throw something really bright that's got a lot of flash coming off it, and still going to give a nice silhouette.
All right. Any other questions?
One thing that I was involved with back in, I think I did the math here, and it was 34 years ago. As John mentioned earlier, we really don't have any stocking here in Ontario. The only time we've done any stocking is through Muskies Canada, where we've reintroduced muskies into an area where they weren't, or they haven't been for years, but they were there previously. And so back in 92, I believe it was, I fished a peat and well muskie hunt on the peat and well flowage out of Nakusa, Wisconsin. And all the proceeds went back into restocking the peat and well flowage there. And it was really cool. At the end of the tournament, all the proceeds went into restocking. They brought the truck in, filled everybody's live well up with muskies, and we took them out into the lake and released them. We actually got a few photos of that I sent into you there, Noah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. One of the photos there, I think Roger Sabata, if anybody from the Wisconsin area probably knows Roger, who passed away, I think one or 2 years ago. I was fortunate to fish with him. And there you can see I think there might be like 10 to 12 inch muskies that we're releasing there. Something really, really cool. That was 34 years ago. It's still one of the coolest things I've ever seen in muskie fishing.
Feels good to give back. It feels good to build that fishery. Feels good to watch those fish grow. Feels great to see a 13-year-old girl catch a giant one that's grown up from there. Now, how old is that 50-inch fish that she's holding in your system?
That's a Wisconsin strain fish. That one is probably 14 years old. So some of the Leech Lake strain fish are getting to 50 within 10 or 11 years.
10 or 11 for a 50, 14 for a Wisconsin. 50 is probably 18 years old in our area, 18, 19 years old in our area. So colder water, slower growth, shorter growing season. Interesting. And so is the future of your fishery the Leech Lake strain? Much more, you said the DNR won't stock the Leech Lake strain.
Yeah, the Capital City chapter of Muskies Inc. is paying for all of those, and that's part of the reason why we were doing that growth study, just to see which ones would get bigger faster. And the biggest fish caught out of our, even though the Wisconsin strain fish have been in here since the early 80s, the Leech Lake strain fish are getting bigger. I mean, the longest ones that have been caught on the Madison chain are all Leech Lakers. The DNR started stocking the Great Lakes strain of Musky. They stocked some of those in 2024, and they'll get some stocked again this year in 2026. So we have yet to see what's going to end up happening with the potential of those fish.
That'll be really interesting, because that's when you say the Great Lakes strain, that's the Georgian Bay strain of muskies that have they built the Green Bay fishery. That's what's made it so good. Those genetics are so big and so strong, and they adapted really well to Green Bay. It'll be interesting to see what they do in a smaller lake and river system. I look forward to hearing about that.
Yeah. Hopefully they do as well as what the Leech Lake strain fish have. So
when you can get 50 inches in 10 years, that's spectacular. And you got a 40-inch fish in what, 5 years, I guess, in that equation. Is that right?
So I'm not sure if in 5. Six probably.
Six to get to 40 inches. That's fantastic. I got to say, I really enjoy talking with you about the stocking, the different strains and such. And I think as Canadians, that's something that we're going to have to get used to, get an education on, and talk about more and more, just going forward with gobies and invasives and such. It is going to be part of the future. So it's amazing to hear what you guys do and the fisheries that you build and support and the effort that goes into it. Kudos to you. Any comments? Maybe, wow, we're only like 12 minutes behind schedule today, which is pretty much a record. Pretty much a record for us, because we can sit and talk muskies for hours and hours. But any final comments or questions from the crew?
There's one, and it's actually for me to answer. So I'll put it up there and I'll answer it. Noah, as a fellow young angler, what is it about musky angling that inspires you to continuer à chasse musky? Well, I started fishing when I was 2 years old. I'm 23 now. And, I got into the bobbers and the worms and catching bass and catfish and then catching pike. And sure enough, the muskie was always the biggest and the baddest fish around. And that's the fish that I wanted to catch. So when I was about 12 years old, I set out on a mission to catch a muskie. And I had a muskie follow me right to the boat. And from that moment, I knew that was the only fish that I really would ever want to fish for. I continued on with my journey of muskie fishing, hunting them, and I caught quite a few. Then just continued to try to learn more and more about the fish and how to catch more and be a better fisherman. I wasn't shy to ask people that I saw muskie fishing, like ask them questions, try to learn more. And I wasn't shy to even ask to go fishing with them, and just trying to surround myself with, the top guys in the area, like John and multiple other muskie fishermen that fish on the Ottawa. I started going out with them. And after putting a few under my belt, I realized that okay, I caught quite a few. I got quite a few big fish, but I really enjoyed, after starting to take my friends out fishing, I realized, wow, catching my friends or netting my friend's first muskie and getting to relive that moment like it was my own was what I really liked. And that's why I got into guiding, because I get to do that every day, getting to net fish for other people. And it kind of just brings me back to that moment of when I caught my first muskie and that feeling that I got. And that feeling, that achievement, that success, because you work so hard for one fish, and being able to do that over and over again it's a blessing. So that's my answer to your question. And James, I'll always fish for muskie, just because I like a challenge. The hardest fish to catch in our river systems, and they're the biggest and baddest fish. So that's why I go after them.
Yeah. Sort of the
See, you
same.
got over your states, right?
Yes, I did.
Sort of the same for all of us. Like there was one fish or one moment where, you know what? There's everything else, and there's musky.
Yeah.
From now on, that is the fish. That's what it's all about. So.
And actually, a funny thing about my first musky experience was I was fishing with a really big spoon. And sure enough, my spoon had a whole lot of weeds on it. And I was fishing with a buddy of mine, and I was reeling it into the boat. And I'm like, oh, I got so much weed. So I was just ripping it in. And sure enough, there was a fish behind it, but I just pulled it out of the water. I didn't see. I didn't have polarized sunglasses or anything like that. But my buddy saw it, and he's like, oh my God, there's a massive fish. There's a massive muskie behind your bait. I'm like, what? So cast back out. Sure enough, it comes in the figure 8 and gills flare. And I'm super inexperienced at this time. I've never had a fish up to the boat. Gills flare, and I just set the hook before it even had the bait in its mouth, just from pure adrenaline and excitement, and watching that fish swim away and never seeing it again. That was the moment that got me hooked. 100%.
Yeah, even not catching it. I think we all remember that. Yeah. First time we saw that fish, even if you don't catch it, the first time I turned a 50 in circles on a figure 8, I thought I had found the genie in the bottle. I turned a fish in 11 circles here on the head pond. It was first fish over 50 that I'd done that with, and just, wow, didn't catch it, but that whole picture still there. And for all of us, that, we've had that moment. It grabbed us, and that's why we're still here. That's why the 3 old guys are still here right now. So,
yep.
1, 2. Where's the 3rd?
Sorry, two old guys and Jeff. Sorry, Jeff. Sorry. All right.
I think we all doing seminars. I always ask people, if they remember their first bass. Maybe a couple people will. Do you remember the first walleye? I don't myself. Do you remember your first muskie? Anybody who's caught a muskie remembers their first muskie. They got their hand up. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do we have any media? Got any shows or events coming up shortly, Jeff?
No, I'll be on the water here in just over 3 weeks.
Wow. Your season starts May 2nd. You are so lucky.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Brent, you got any shows coming up?
I got one more seminar that I can think of offhand coming up at the Stelco Steel Fishing Banquet this Friday.
The Stelco Steel Fishing Banquet.
Yeah.
That sounds like a big one.
Yeah. Last time I did it, they had 300 people, and that was a few years back. So it's a smaller club than what it was. So I'm still expecting at least a couple hundred people for that one. So it's I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic. That's a great event with 300 people. I am doing the Fishing Canada Outdoor Radio Journal program tomorrow with Ange and Pete, two of my favorite people from the fishing world in Canada. The Fishing Canada guys have been fantastic for 40 years. Love Pete Bowman. So we'll be doing that. And other than that, we're all here together. Jeff will be out catching muskies, but we're all going to be back talking about muskies. Maybe we'll talk about the first muskies that Jeff caught on that show. But we'll all be back here 1 month from now on the first Monday in May, which is Anybody got a calendar?
May 4th, I believe.
May 4th, with hopefully another guest that is as informative and as nice and easy to deal with and as experienced as our man, Jeff Hanson. Thank you very much for being here, Jeff.
Yeah,
pleasure.
Thanks.
Really great to explore our 2 different worlds, and fantastic.
Yeah, appreciate you guys asking me. It was great to be with you guys.
All right. Until next time, everybody, over and out from the Suick Seminar Series.
See ya.
Good night, everybody.